Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Michael Wald, the Blood Detective, and today we'll be talking about detoxification, what I call natural detoxification. Does it really work? And I'll also be discussing number one, what is a toxin? What are the processes of detoxification in the body in a general sense? What are some of the things we can do naturally to actually detox toxins? And is there a difference in how we detox different toxins? I'm a doctor of chiropractic and a board certified nutritionist, sports nutritionist with a master's degree, also in nutrition. I provide acupuncture to my clients, and I am also a life coach. And I did graduate medical school, but I do not have an active license to practice medicine. So let's get into this fascinating topic. Over my 33 years or so doing natural health and functional medicine, the areas and interest in detoxification has never wavered. However, most of what I hear from people, even most of what I hear from my fellow practitioners, is just dead wrong regarding detoxification. So the information I'm about to impart is meant for your educational purposes. It's not meant as a substitute for sound medical or health advice. So let's begin with what you need to know. What is detoxification? Where does it take place in the body? Why is detoxification so important in the first place? What is an actual toxin? What is the best way to detoxify a particular toxin? Of course, we won't hit all of them, but a couple of key ones. And what are 5 common examples of toxins that we're exposed to? And again, I'll explain how they are actually detoxified. So let's start with what is detoxification. So detoxification is a process, it's a biological process of neutralizing and eliminating toxins from the body. And many toxins exist in our environment. Those are called exogenous toxins, and some toxins are made in our physiology. Those are internal or endogenous toxins. And then, of course, there's the exogenous plus the endogenous toxic load on the body. And we all have varying abilities to deal with toxins based on a variety of factors, including how our different detoxification organs deal with these various toxins. So detoxification involves converting fat-soluble toxins into water-soluble toxins so they can be excreted. That is a key point. Most toxins are fat soluble, which means they'll stay in the body for many, many years, if not for your entire lifetime. And they store themselves in your fat tissue, which also makes it very difficult to lose weight when your weight gain is from a toxin or multiple toxin problems. Because imagine my fingers as toxins inside of this circle, which is your fat tissue. Your body will want to dilute these toxins by maintaining the fat tissue and even growing the fat tissue. I like to say to my clients that the solution to pollution is dilution. So the body will want to keep on fat, which dilutes these fat-soluble toxins, unless the body can convert them in the liver from fat-soluble toxins to water-soluble toxins so they can be excreted. And then other toxins are let out through the air, and a couple of small toxins through the skin, and of course there's detoxification through the urine and also the stool. And different toxins are detoxified in different ways and pathways in the body. So key detoxification systems are, as I just mentioned, liver, kidneys, also the lungs, and the lymphatic system. So where does detoxification take place? Again, it can take place in a variety of organs and multiple organs at one time. So the liver primarily converts toxins into harmless byproducts. So the liver it is true to say that it is the primary detoxification organ with over 5,000 functions that we know of. And the kidneys, or the renal system, filters blood and excretes water-soluble toxins via the urine. And the skin, lung, and the intestinal tract, they're considered secondary detoxification sites. As I mentioned, certain toxins can be detoxified, through the sweat, respiration, and stool. Those are considered secondary routes of detoxification. And why is detoxification so important? I know that the answer is obvious for a lot of us, but it's important that we're all on the same page. Number one, we want detoxification because we want to prevent the accumulation of toxic substances that damage our organs, tissues, and glands. So a certain amount of toxin, depending on the toxin, we might be able to manage, but we get to a threshold where then everything starts breaking down, and then we get all the symptoms of toxins. And various toxins have different types of symptoms. And detoxification supports immune function and reduces inflammation. We know that most diseases in humans are underlined, I should say, by a chronic long-term inflammation. And toxins, depending on what they are, can also lower the immune system. And with a low immune system, that makes us susceptible to everything from cancers to other conditions, such as increased risk of infection, for example. So what is a toxin? So a toxin is a harmful substance by definition that interferes with normal biological function. So one example of a toxin might be heavy metals. So mercury, for example, might find its way into the bone marrow, suppress the immune system, and bump out calcium because mercury is heavier than calcium. And toxins, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, can be endogenous from our internal metabolism or exogenous from the environment. So what is the best way to detoxify a toxin in the body? Now, this is a really key thing because most of the time, people will say to me, Dr. Wald, I read that this particular product right here is the best detoxification product there is. And I say, well, for detoxing what exactly? We don't detoxify mercury the same way we detoxify various inflammatory mediators. We don't detoxify arsenic the same way we detoxify cadmium. So we need to know what the toxins are. Now, sometimes we do not know what the toxins are. And that doesn't mean that all is lost because we only have so many detoxification pathways in our liver. There are three main ones. And the plethora of toxins, the tens of thousands, if not millions of toxins that we're exposed to, are generally speaking managed through just these three pathways. So, for example, when it comes to plastics and the various carcinogenic and toxic compounds that you'll find mixed with plastics and plastics themselves, we know that even though we may not know all of them, if we support the glutathione conjugation pathway in the liver, that will be effective for removing a good amount of those toxins. Is it all we need to do? No. And how do we know we're detoxifying? We need to do testing to know we're detoxifying. And we also need to do testing to know what toxins we are trying to detoxify in the first place. So when we're asked, what is the best way to detoxify a toxin, it depends on all of those things. However, here's a couple of basic general ways in which to think of detoxification. So you want to support liver function through nutrients like glutathione, N-acetylcysteine, which is abbreviated NAC, very, very important detoxifier, and various B vitamins because these detox pathways in the liver require a bunch of B vitamins. And then we want to ensure proper hydration, fiber intake, and sweating. Next, reduce toxin exposure. So it's important to try to identify the toxin or toxins in question, and then to think about those toxins in terms of where they might come from in the environment, and then investigate those environments if possible. So what are 5 common examples of toxins that we're exposed to, and how do we detoxify them? And again, these are just general means, but they are scientifically accurate. Aflatoxins from moldy foods, or not even moldy foods, even from peanut butter. Peanut butter is a major source of the carcinogen aflatoxins, and 2 tablespoons of peanut butter a day is a toxic dose. So aflatoxins are detoxified by various liver enzymes and glutathione. Pesticides are broken down in the liver during what's known as phase 1 and phase 2 detox. And heavy metals like mercury and lead, for example, they are chelated and also detoxified, made water soluble, and excreted by the kidneys and the gastrointestinal tract. Alcohol is metabolized by liver enzymes, a particular enzyme known as alcohol dehydrogenase. And the point here is that we need to appreciate that different organs have a role in the detoxification process. And depending on the toxin or toxins, we want to support all the organs involved. There's a few other examples here. I mentioned plasticizers and how they can be detoxified with glutathione conjugation, cysteine, for example, vitamin C, zinc. But those are not guarantees. And how much of those nutrients you need needs to be determined on an individual basis. So let's get into these particular toxins a little bit more. Aflatoxins, which I mentioned, are produced from molds on various foods and also in nut butters. They can be detoxified partially, at least, through the use of chlorophyll, which binds to the aflatoxin in the gut, reducing its absorption in the first place. So the dose of chlorophyll needs to be quite significant. And then curcumin, or a turmeric extract, protects liver cells and promotes detoxification enzyme activity. So whenever you're dealing with toxins that you know through your research, for example, or you've been told by your practitioner involve the liver, curcumin is important. So is N-acetylcysteine, abbreviated NAC or NAC, which increases glutathione production, which is involved in detoxifying, again, thousands of different toxins. So that's always a safe bet. But when you use NAC, you need to know what you're doing. NAC is also a chelator, which means it binds to various minerals. So if you take that with minerals in either foods or supplements, you're going to bind a good amount of those. So you need to know the right time to take the right detoxification agents in the right person at the right dose. And then there's selenium, which is also needed to support glutathione peroxidase function. And then resveratrol, which we all have heard about originally, I think, from it being identified in red wine, reduces aflatoxin-induced DNA damage. So that moldy product aflatoxin actually damages our DNA. In terms of pesticides, organophosphates, and herbicides, cruciferous vegetables help to detoxify these pesticides, but they can't, these various vegetables, the cruciferous vegetables, they have to be organic themselves. Otherwise, you're just adding to the pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide loads. So cruciferous vegetables are broccoli and cauliflower, for example, and they contain sulforaphane, which helps the liver enzyme activation, the detoxification enzymes. And milk thistle, otherwise known as silymarin, enhances liver detoxification and antioxidant defense. Vitamin C helps neutralize oxidative stress from toxins. Various fibers bind and eliminate some of the toxins and brings them out through the stool. And glutathione is essential for what's known as phase 2 liver detoxification, which is that conjugation pathway or binding pathway that converts a fat-soluble to a water-soluble toxin, which I've mentioned a few times. And then heavy metals. Well, if you have a serious heavy metal burden issue, you do not mess around with diet. And some of these natural remedies that I've mentioned here, they will not work, with a few exceptions. So, for example, you're going to get a mild binding to metals with cilantro and chlorella, but not if you have a real, when I say a real metals issue, I mean one that is significantly high. If you want to prevent heavy metal overload, then you might want to try cilantro and chlorella, but make sure that they themselves are not contaminated with heavy metals, which spices often are. There's alpha-lipoic acid, or ALA, which is in the B vitamin family, that helps mobilize metals from tissues for excretion. Also helps insulin resistance and helps protect the nervous system from toxins. And then there's something known as modified citrus pectin, which binds to metals in the gut and aids in their excretion, but very mild binding. Once again, if you have a serious metals problem, you don't mess around with this stuff. It will not work. NAC, however, may work because NAC is what I call a real detoxification product, which means you'll find it in toxicology books. It's in medical education. It's in chiropractic education. It's in my dietitian education. It's a real detoxifier and chelator. So it's crucial for protecting cells from metal-induced oxidative damage, and NAC is helps to build, or is a precursor to glutathione, which is a tripeptide that helps in the conjugation and the elimination of toxins. And then there's zinc and selenium, which compete for toxic metals because heavy metals will push out zinc, selenium, calcium, iron, copper. So the right doses of zinc and selenium could help to offset the toxic load. But you may need to have other medications or even intravenous levels of detoxification products or oral products. In terms of alcohol, NAC is particularly good. It replenishes glutathione, which is depleted in the liver by alcohol, and this depletion hastens liver failure and cirrhosis of the liver. And B vitamins, B complex, especially B1, B2, B6 and B12, which are lost in the urine at very high rates with alcohol intake. So you want to supplement with B vitamins. Also magnesium and milk thistle. Milk thistle because it protects the liver so well. So if they pre-treat people with milk thistle and then give them alcohol, they have a much, much easier time detoxifying agents and other toxins. And also the use of vitamin C and E in the right dose for the right patient at the right time. And then pesticides, like sulforaphane, which you can get from broccoli sprouts, boost detox enzymes for BPA breakdown. And then there's an element in cruciferous vegetables known as IC3 or indole 3 carbinol, and that promotes estrogen detoxification. So earlier I said we don't detoxify heavy metals the same way we detoxify estrogen. So I3C is very important for detoxifying estrogens, particularly the 17 beta estradiol estrogen. That's a pro-breast cancer and ovarian cancer form of estrogen. And then there's fiber, which binds to BPA and enhances its excretion. Green tea, particularly the active ingredient known as EGCG, which supports liver enzymes. And then activated charcoal, which can bind to BPA and a lot of different toxins like heavy metals. But again, you don't want to use that for serious heavy metal toxicity. Charcoal is also good for absorbing radiation in the body, but you don't want to take it with any other minerals because it may bind to them and then you won't have them absorbed. So in addition to identifying the various toxins, you want to, at least I, provide people with a food plan that contains the nutrients from the foods that specifically support the detoxification of the toxins and other health issues I find in that person. And then when I recommend nutritional supplements, the doses have to be real enough and sufficient enough to promote the various detoxification pathways and organs, such as the liver and the lungs and the skin and lymphatic system, etc. So that those doses have to be right, and you get baseline laboratory testing of the various toxins if possible, and then you make sure that these toxins are removed. And finally, when you do the lab testing for a person, you want to do testing in a lot of different areas of the body to make sure you're covering your bases. So in my holistically oriented practice, I can do hormone testing. I can do heavy metal testing. I can do tests that a GP would do. I could do testing that an immunologist would do. I can do testing that an infectious disease specialist would do. But your primary doctor, your family doctor, they will not usually test outside of their specialty, and for good reason. And they'll admit it to you. It's not their specialty. My specialty is holistic, so I make it my business to know all these areas of lab. And I published a 500-page textbook entitled The Anti-Aging Encyclopedia of Laboratory Tests, which basically is an outproduct of my 33 years of how to read and interpret laboratory work, both medically and nutritionally. So I want to thank you all for joining me for this presentation on detoxification. I hope it opened your eyes a little bit. You might want to supplement this conversation with my other podcast, which is about the alkaline lie and also toxins all around us. You can search any podcast platform, Ask the Blood Detective for those. You can also search on social media and my website, of course, search the search bar and the podcast menu. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.